I've got to say, as a Red Bull supporter, as a Max fan, or whatever you want to call it, I just I struggle to understand people, man. Like I really struggle to understand people. This kid has literally he's literally taken his talents and he's created an absolute monster of himself, right? But the world just hate this kid, man. They just hate him so much. Like he complains about something on the radio and they just ridicule him. But like every driver complains. So why is it that they have a go at Max every time? Like Max is the only one that complains on the radio. I just don't get it. You know, after the race or after qualifying, he was laughing with Lando about everything. Laughing about, I mean, even Lando said Max was laughing about how bad his car was this weekend. Like, he was so gracious in his defeat. He really was gracious in his defeat, which you don't see from a lot of other champions, if you want to put it that way. So from a Red Bull supporter, I've got to say to all the haters and all the Mercedes haters and so on, I'm sure he's on his bed crying with $1 million in his hand at the moment, because I really don't think he cares too much. But at the same time, stop hating, stop being so sour, man. It's just one weekend. You'll be back winning next week again. Anyways, let's move on to the talking points, the real talking points, and not the fanboy ramble points. Anyways, um, what's going on with those penalties, guys? What's going on? Does Red Bull have some kind of? Okay, I'm gonna say something way off. I'm gonna say something ridiculous now. And I hope this gets clipped because we've seen a lot of teams in the past have these deals with FIA, and I've got to ask, does Red Bull and FIA have something going on? Because I'm pretty certain that Max impeded it was pretty evident. I'm also pretty certain that Perez literally just wiped Albon off the road, like completely, and Yuki, to be fair. So I just want to know, how did these two get away with murder this weekend? What's going on? Where were those penalties?
Go, Dan.
Okay, Graham, honestly, I'm not the one for my tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. But there has been, and again, neither a Max or a Lewis fan. I'm just using it as an example before Team LH and Team Orange, the Orange Army come knock at my door tomorrow night at midnight. But even back to Abu Dhabi 2021, there, for me personally, has been a significant favorance towards Max. I'm not saying Lewis got it worse back then, but I'm talking about situations where it's as bright as daylight that Red Bull make a mistake and they don't get the slap on the wrist that they deserve. Besides Max blocking Yuki in Q2, he blocked someone else in Q1. Yeah. And then start of Q2, he literally sat in the pit lane for nearly 30 seconds. And a lot of people said, no, the car just went into anti-stall. The car didn't go into anti-stall. Max literally sat there and waited. And it's literally in the rules and regulations that the pit lane is not allowed to be blocked unless it's because of an actual accident. The pit lane needs to be a constant flowing system. It needs to be like basically a slowpoke highway. Yeah. Not the point. For me, like I said, I'm not the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory type. But there is something fishy when it comes to the FIA and Red Bull. Perez murdered Albon and Tsunoda's race. Max impeded 2 people and held up the pit lane, and nothing came of it. But also, to add on, the FIA was a bit lackluster this weekend, but because besides Red Bull, there were a few other drivers and a few other teams that did some sketchy stuff that never was reprimanded. Me as a Ferrari fan, how did Leclerc with the initial safety car go from 4.5 seconds behind Sainz to when they enter the pits to be 8 seconds behind Sainz? You're not allowed to go that slow, even under safety car conditions. You're not allowed to hold up the rest of the grid. Yes. There's a lot of stuff like this that happened throughout the weekend that was sketchy. That I just feel the FIA decided, you know what? Max is going to lose in any case. Let's just take a Hawaii weekend while they race in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's all good. But for me personally, Graham, to answer your question, there is something fishy, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But there is something definitely fishy with the Red Bull and the FIA.
Cool.
I mean, look, there is something fishy, of course.
These are the takes that I need, guys. Come, bring them coming. These are the clips. These are the viral moments.
I think the FIA just left it because they saw Red Bull's performance in the weekend. They were like, "What's the point?" To be honest with you, and I'm going to actually also answer it from a marketing point of view. Guys, Max is the most or one of the biggest cash cows for Formula One.
Yeah.
Especially for the US market.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of, besides Formula One, I love Formula One, but Graham knows I watch a lot of US sports. I watch a lot of NFL, I watch a lot of basketball, and I see how those leagues are ran. Those leagues are star orientated.
Yeah.
And that's what Formula One is doing, trying to do. They have the star thing going on.
Yeah.
You've seen the change, how they do the post race interviews and all that stuff. Everything has changed.
Yeah.
So I think for them now it's like, oh, it's Max and they're not looking good this weekend. So we're not gonna really pay attention to his penalties. He already came out of Q2 and we're already going to see him overtaking cars during the race.
Yeah.
That's gonna be entertainment for the people that's gonna watch the race. So let's just leave it. Instead of him starting at 15 after the penalties, let him start at 11 and just work himself up the grid because the car is not performing for this season. For this race. That's the way I saw it. But Dirk, you spot on that.
All the other reason is that they just thought that nobody would notice. Anyways, let's move on.
And no one did. I mean, no one noticed that Stroll didn't start the race. That was the most funniest thing ever. But anyway,
that's actually true. That is actually
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. I have got one more thing to say about Red Bull. This is something that I somehow knew about or I thought about, and then I saw it on TikTok of someone called Coffee Corner, Terry's Coffee Corner, who is an extremely insightful content creator. If you guys are into F1 stuff, go and follow him. He's extremely insightful. And he made a good point about why Red Bull struggled this weekend. And if I'm really honest with you, it is something that I had already, I read about it, to be honest. I actually read about it. And from there, I thought, okay, it kind of makes sense. One of the reasons why it was one of the possible reasons why Red Bull lacked so much performance is ride height, and it's very similar to Ferrari. So if you remember last year, Ferrari were doing extremely well until they changed the rules, and the rules meant that Ferrari had to lift their ride height, and all of a sudden their car just wasn't the same. Now in Singapore, because because of the drains and the elevated streets, because it's a street track and so on, they would have had to lift their ride. You know, in Singapore, there's always a lot of sparks, more than usual. And if they didn't lift their ride height, they would have worn out their plank, which obviously is not ideal. You know, the center plank that goes underneath the car, the plank that sparks. So obviously they had to lift up the ride height, and so that didn't work. Obviously, like, it's the one thing that they had to change, and they changed it, and it's obviously affected that car dramatically. And if you look at all the detail at the bottom of their car, I think their car requires them to be slightly lower because it sucks that air through. But if there's too much space between the car and the floor, then there's no suction because there's a lot more free flow. Which means that maybe their car doesn't work well with the free flow. They need that car to suck the air like it usually does.
So are you saying that they might struggle in Las Vegas?
So I'm saying, so what I'm thinking is, look, naturally there is not many. There's maybe one or two tracks during the year that this is actually a necessity for them too. put their ride height higher. This was one of them. If there's another race, it could possibly be Vegas, but we're not sure because we've never really been there, so we don't really know. We don't really know what is required. Like, are they going to have to increase the up their ride height or not? We don't know, but it is a possibility. With that being said, at the end of the day, guys, next week they're back winning again. It's probably not going to change anything. Max is still winning the championship. Red Bull are still wrapping up the constructors in a couple races time. So
next weekend they could have done it this weekend if they had a 1-4.
Yeah.
So next weekend they're taking the
but they have to be like 40 points ahead of Mercedes. But now obviously Mercedes has taken a bit of points out of them, so it might be a bit more now. So it might.
So it might be like
so it might be 2 or 3 races from now. Mathematically, if you think about it mathematically. So anyways, that is it for Red Bull. So if any of you were interested as to why Red Bull's performance was low, perhaps that is something to think about. Whether it's true or not, I don't really know, but my logical thinking and my technical understanding of F1, it makes a lot of sense. Terry is also an extremely credible source, so if he thinks about that, and I mean, if he thinks that as well, then I'm very inclined to believe it. So that is it on Red Bull.